Working on cars sucks. I think working on airplanes is just cleaner.
I can guarantee you that if you're not inspired by at least one of the articles, there may be something wrong with you, like you might not like aviation.
This aircraft is genuinely unlike anything else ever built. Welcome into the Future in Flight podcast, coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line. We've got a whole shelf of cool-looking FOD we scooped up off the runway. I'm your host, Sean Starker, and today we're going deep, behind the panel and into the wires, and inside one of aviation's most essential and underrated career fields, avionics. We're sitting down with Zach Fryar and Matt Davis from Sarasota Avionics, a shop that started as three guys in a corner of a hangar in Venice, Florida, and grew into one of the most respected names in the Southeast. We're going to talk about what avionics actually is, why it might be one of the most future-proof careers in the sky, and why the guy who said if you can use an iPhone, you can fly a GTN might just be onto something. Then we're headed over to Aviation USA, where Editor-in-Chief Jacob Pete is gearing up for Sun and Fun. And we've got the inside track on their brand new spring issue, their legendary Tram Talk, and how a magazine built for dreamers is giving everyone from 8-year-olds to 78-year-olds a seat at the table. And we close it out with the Vintage Aircraft Spotlight, featuring one of the most jaw-dropping machines ever to leave the ground. 10 engines, a wingspan the length of a football field, and a mission born from the scariest what-if in American history. Buckle up, it's going to be a great one. Picture this, a corner of a hangar in Venice, Florida. 3 guys, a few hand tools, and a whole lot of broken radios. That was it. That was the whole operation. No massive facility, no fleet of service vehicles, no sponsored hangar at Sun and Fun, just 3 guys in a dream, and a pile of avionics that needed fixing. Fast forward to today. That tiny corner has become one of the most respected avionics shops in the Southeast.
Number 762, maintain VFR 2,100 till advised.
762, 2,100 till advised.
Not only that, but they're the backdrop for this story. Today, we're pulling back the panel and looking at one of aviation's most critical and most underappreciated fields, avionics. Zach Fryar grew up around aviation. His dad was one of those 3 original guys in that Venice hangar, turning wrenches and fixing radios. Zach is now a part of the leadership team at Sarasota Avionics, a company that's expanded to multiple locations across Florida, earned a coveted Cirrus Service Center designation in Tampa, and become one of the most recognizable brands at events across the country. But when I sat down with Zach, the first thing he wanted to talk about wasn't the expansion or the awards or the famous pilots they've worked with. He wanted to talk about people.
People feel at home when they come here. They know that we're going to take care of them.
And that's not just marketing talk. Matt Davis, one of their lead technicians, moved to Florida from New Jersey. He didn't know a soul. Within weeks of starting at Sarasota Avionics, his coworkers had thrown him a birthday party, made him cupcakes, and invited him to their homes on holidays.
They just really took me in.
That culture matters because working in avionics isn't just a job, it's a craft, and crafts require mentors. So let's talk about what avionics actually is. Because if you've never been inside of a cockpit, you might be thinking, aren't they just the screens? Kind of. But imagine the difference between swapping out a light bulb and rewiring an entire building. One is a task, the other is a system. Avionics is the system. We're talking navigation, communication, autopilot, traffic alerting, weather displays, engine monitoring. All of it has to not only work independently, but talk to each other. And in an aircraft, failure isn't just an inconvenience. It can be catastrophic. That's why avionics techs aren't just electricians. They're problem solvers, systems thinkers, part engineer, part detective.
You got to find out what their goals are. Sometimes you have to steer them in a direction that maybe they weren't thinking about in the first place, but it's going to work better for what they want. They just don't know it.
That's the consultation process at work. A pilot comes in, maybe they saw a cool upgrade on YouTube. Maybe they want a specific autopilot. And Zach's team has to figure out, does that actually match their aircraft, their mission, their budget? And once the right equipment is selected, the personalization goes deeper than most people realize. Now the panel needs to be set up exactly the way that best suits the operator. That's the job of a panel fabricator. Someone whose entire job is working with customers to lay out their cockpit exactly the way they want it. And Sarasota Avionics has a full-time one on staff.
We have a guy that does our own panels. We talk with customers all day. Hey, how do you like this setup? Do you want say if it's a G5, do you want it here or do you want it here? And they get to customize it how they see fit. Like they want their radio closer instead of their engine monitor to the pilot side, they can do that.
Think about that. You're not just picking equipment off a menu. You're designing the cockpit experience you want. What information you see first, what's within easiest reach, what your eyes naturally go to in a high workload moment. That's the level of customization that didn't really exist for general aviation pilots a generation ago. Of course, there are limits, physics and all.
It also depends on wiring and how big it is. This G3X won't fit there, this radio won't fit there. Those things you're going to have to troubleshoot with the customer and kind of get exactly what they want and then set some limitations.
Troubleshoot with the customer. Set limitations. That right there is what separates a good shop from a great one. The ability to manage expectations honestly while still delivering something the pilot loves waking up to every single morning. The avionics world is in the middle of a revolution. Pilots used to rely on something called the six-pack, 6 analog gauges spread across the panel. Airspeed, altitude, attitude, turn coordinator, heading, vertical speed. Old school, reliable, but limited. Now, you've got full glass panels, touchscreen navigators, synthetic vision that creates a 3D picture of the terrain around you, even when you can't see it out the window. ADS-B traffic, real-time weather, auto-land systems. And according to Zach, that shift is happening fast, and it's being driven as much by economics as by technology.
Everyone is ripping out 6-packs and ripping out old King radios and glass over and over and over again.
It's hard to get those parts now.
You can't fix the old stuff. It doesn't work nearly as good.
Parts availability. That's something people don't always think about. The legacy system that's been in your panel since 1978, at some point there's few people making those components. Few parts, fewer people to repair them. And when that happens, the math changes pretty quickly.
Guys are saving some money, buying an airplane that needs an upgraded panel, and they're coming out with exactly the plane they want at the end of the day, and it's usually glass.
That's actually a smart play for younger buyers entering the market. Find a solid airframe with an outdated panel, get it at a lower price point, and invest in a modern avionics upgrade. You end up with an aircraft that flies like it came off the line yesterday, sometimes better. And a lot of that revolution has one name attached to it: Garmin. If you've ever used Google Maps, you already have a mental model for what Garmin does in the cockpit. Except instead of avoiding traffic on I-75, you're navigating airways, managing approaches, and monitoring the weather at altitude. Products like the GTN 750 touchscreen navigator and the G1000 integrated flight deck have fundamentally changed what it means to fly. The G1000, for example, consolidates your primary flight instruments, navigation, engine monitoring, traffic, and weather, all into 2 large screens right in front of you. Everything a pilot needs. Integrated, color-coded, and intuitive.
Emergency Autoland activated.
And then there's Autoland, Garmin's emergency Autoland system. Available on the Cirrus VisionJet, SR-22 G7, and select Piper aircraft. It can, if a pilot becomes incapacitated, autonomously fly the airplane to the nearest suitable airport, land it, and even communicate with ATC along the way, all without humans touching the controls. I asked Zach what this means for the future, and his answer was honest.
I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen yet.
Right. Nobody expected it this soon. And that's the thing about avionics. The pace of change is relentless. What felt like science fiction 10 years ago is now a line item on an upgrade quote. Zach put it perfectly when I asked what modern glass does for the average pilot day to day.
Being able to see your airspeed, your altitude, your vertical speed all in one screen right in your face helps a lot, especially when you got to make quick decisions in flight.
That's the promise of modern avionics. Not just more data, but the right data at the right moment in a format your brain can actually process under pressure.
I think if you can use an iPhone, you can use a GTN or a TXI.
That might be the most important thing I've heard in a long time when it comes to opening up avionics to a younger generation. If you grew up swiping touchscreens, tapping through apps, navigating complex UI systems, you already have more of the instinct for this than you might think. Matt Davis, who came into aviation from automotive work, put it this way when I asked him what the transition was like.
Working on cars sucks. I think working on airplanes is just cleaner. I think it's a little more of a challenge, and I like that a little more. You got to really fix stuff on airplanes. Your car's broken, you buy a new part. There's guys who their knowledge runs so deep. I just try to hang on to every word that they tell me and soak in as much as I can. It's like tribal knowledge, you can't read it in a book. So you just got to do it and soak it in. Be a sponge.
Be a sponge. Write that down. Let's talk careers, because this is the Future in Flight podcast, and the whole point is to get you from wherever you are right now to wherever you want to be in the sky. Avionics is genuinely one of the most future-proof careers in aviation. Here's why. Everything is getting more complex. Every upgrade cycle adds more systems, more interfaces, more integration points, and the workforce of experienced avionics techs is aging out. Companies like Sarasota Avionics are hungry for talented young people who love technology, love aviation, and love the challenge of making complicated things work.
I think it's one of those fields that are going to be there forever, that you can't replace.
Think about that. We're watching automation creep into every industry, but someone has to install, maintain, certify, and troubleshoot the very systems that make that automation possible. The automation revolution in aviation runs directly through the avionics bay. So how do you get in? Here's the path a lot of people take. Community college aviation maintenance programs, FAA airframe and power plant certification, the A&P license. Some techs come from electronics or automotive backgrounds like Matt and cross over into avionics on the job. And increasingly, companies like Sarasota Avionics are looking for people who are just passionate and willing to learn.
Jump in. Immerse yourself. There's opportunities everywhere. You just gotta take advantage.
Jump in. Full throttle, heels to the floor. That's the play. Now, I asked Zach and Matt where this is all heading. Autonomous aircraft, auto land, pilotless travel. What's coming?
I think there's no replacement for a pilot. Every single situation is dynamic. I think automation, more and more installs, everything is more automated. It's going to make it safer, but I think there really is no replacement for a pilot in the seat.
That perspective matters, especially coming from someone whose hands are inside these systems every single day. The tech is incredible. The trajectory is toward more automation, more assistance, more intelligence in the cockpit. But the human judgment, the experience, the ability to improvise when something unexpected goes wrong, that's not going away. If anything, the more sophisticated the avionics, the more important it is to have a skilled human who understands what the machine is doing and why, and who installs that machine, who makes sure it's certified and airworthy. The avionics tech, of course.
Venice traffic 32769, turning right base 13 Venice.
Sarasota Avionics started with 3 guys and a third of a hangar. Today, they're a multi-location operation, a Cirrus service center, a Mooney service center, and one of the most welcoming shops in aviation. If you want to see them in action, look them up at SarasotaAvionics.com. Hit up their live chat, or better yet, fly in. They'll be happy to show you around. And if you're listening to this as a young person who's ever looked at a cockpit and thought, I want to understand all of this, avionics might be your calling. The field needs you. The technology is breathtaking, and the community, as Zach and Matt showed us today, is one that takes care of its own. Coming up next, we'll catch up with Jacob Peed, editor-in-chief of Aviation magazine, to find out what's going on, what's coming up, and what they have in store for Sun and Fun. This episode of the Future in Flight podcast is brought to you by Sarasota Avionics. For more than 35 years, Sarasota Avionics has helped pilots modernize their aircraft with the latest avionics technology, from custom glass panels and autopilots to complete avionics installations and maintenance. With multiple FAA-certified repair stations across Florida and a team of experienced technicians and pilots, they're dedicated to delivering quality work, reliable performance, and the kind of service pilots trust. Whether you're upgrading your panel, troubleshooting an issue, or planning your next avionics project, their team can help design the right solution for your aircraft. Learn more at SarasotaAvionics.com. You know that feeling when you walk through the gates of an air show for the first time and everything just kind of clicks? The smell of jet fuel in the morning air, the thunder of an engine on the runway, the crowd leaning their heads back in unison to follow something streaking across the sky. That feeling, that's what One Magazine has built its entire existence around. Aviation USA is a publication that does something a lot of people in aviation talk about, but few pull off. It tells the real stories, the human stories, the ones that make you think, maybe that could be me. And right now, they're gearing up for one of the biggest moments of their year. Today, we're taking you behind the scenes of Aviation magazine as they put the finishing touches on their brand new spring issue and gear up for one of the most legendary aviation gatherings on the planet, Sun and Fun in Lakeland, Florida. I sat down with Jacob Peed, editor-in-chief of Aviation USA, and he had a lot to share. For most media outlets, showing up to an air show is a business decision. For Aviation, Sun and Fun is something closer to a homecoming.
Sun and Fun and the Lakeland Aero Club and that whole education thing they're doing with the youth was really the inspiration for Aviation magazine. So it's almost a homecoming when we show back up there.
Think about that for a second. The whole reason this magazine exists, the articles, the rising stars, the career stories, it all traces back to watching young people at an air show and thinking someone should be telling these stories. And now, every spring, they come back as media sponsors, as storytellers, with a brand new edition in hand.
We do a lot of stuff around the grounds. Our distribution is really big.
And when Jacob says distribution, he's not talking about a stack of magazines on one table near the entrance. He's talking about 15-plus locations across the showgrounds, campgrounds, hospitality areas, everywhere.
We have magazines in over 15 locations, and then we do some coaster promotion. So the idea is to push the message of inspirational story to motivate and inspire not just the young people, but the mid-career pivoters and the older people that are trying to help those coming in, that help build those bridges where they're needed.
I love that image. Someone sitting back after a long day on the flight line, cold soda or lemonade in hand, and they pick up a magazine off the table. Right there on that page might be a story that changes something in them. But Aviation doesn't just leave magazines around and hope for the best. They've got something that honestly I think is one of the coolest setups at an air show I've heard of. It's called Tram Talk.
We have a tractor and the tram, and it is Aviation's tram. From Tuesday, we start at 10 a.m. and we drive around till 3 o'clock all day long. And young people lead the Tram Talk. My daughter Jordan is the hostess.
Here's how it works. Aviation's tram rolls through the showgrounds, literally right through the action, while people hop on and off and share their stories. Industry veterans, influencers, students, innovators, people you recognize and people you've never heard of. And the secret ingredient? The interviewers are young people, not just guests, not just passengers. They're running the show.
Other people can come on and actually be the interviewers, not just the people that are being interviewed. It's really designed to give young people the experience of being part of a live interview process at an air show with all the action going on around, driving around the actual show and things are happening in the background.
So if you've ever watched an interview and thought, I could do this, this is literally your shot. Tram Talk runs Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And Jacob says you can just show up. But if you want to make sure there's space for you, especially if you want to interview someone, reach out ahead of time.
You can schedule it ahead of time, which I would suggest to do so that we know exactly when and we have the space.
We'll have all the contact info in the show notes. So if you're heading to Sun and Fun this year and you want a seat on that tram, don't wait. This year, Aviation is also operating out of a brand new booth location, and it's a pretty significant upgrade. They've moved into the Future in Flight Plaza, inside an air-conditioned tent called the Flight Path and Education Center. Booth EC07, that's Echo Charlie 07. And air conditioning at Sun and Fun in April, that's not nothing.
The Flight Path and Education Center is a great place for us.
That's exactly the kind of energy you want. Flight schools, training programs, aviation services, all under one roof, all pointing the same direction. And right in the middle of it, Aviation with a fresh issue and a tram waiting outside. Now, about that spring issue, I tried to get Jacob to spill some details. He didn't take the bait.
I could ruin that for everybody, or I could say just pick your copy up. We always have great, inspiring stories. I can guarantee you that if you're not inspired by at least one of the articles, there may be something wrong with you, like you might not like aviation.
Fair enough, but he did drop one hint. One article in the new issue covers a career path that most people don't think about when they picture aviation. Insurance. Aviation insurance sales. The kind of work that keeps the whole industry flying, legally and financially, but rarely gets its own headline. That's the Aviation brand in a nutshell. The story you didn't know you needed. Here's something that stuck with me from this conversation. Aviation doesn't just publish about people, they publish by people. Contributors range from industry veterans to total newcomers, and the range Jacob described, it's remarkable.
Our youngest contributor was 8 years old, and he has contributed several times since, and doing very well in aviation. And the oldest gentleman was a 78-year young, super excited aviator and industry veteran that really wanted to share his knowledge to help younger people navigate the pathways to shorten their cycle times getting into the industry.
8 to 78. That's the span of voices inside a single magazine. And Jacob's message to anyone sitting on a story they're not sure is worth telling? Submit it anyway.
You will be very surprised on the people that you will end up inspiring just by sharing your story. You might not think it's great yourself. There are others that do, people that maybe see themselves like you did at one point in time.
That's the whole thing right there. You don't need to have landed on the moon. You just need to have been somewhere someone else hasn't been yet and be willing to talk about it. So here's the full picture heading into Sun and Fun. Aviation's brand new spring edition debuts at the show. Look for it in campgrounds, hospitality areas. Pick one up. Find them at booth EC07, that's Echo Charlie 07, in the Flight Path and Education Center, inside the Future in Flight Plaza. It's air conditioned. You're welcome. Hop on for Tram Talk Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And maybe get behind the mic yourself. You never know who might show up. And if you've got a story to tell, head to aviationusa.com. Submit an article and join a community of contributors that runs from 8 years old to 78. The Future in Flight podcast will also be at the Aviation booth during the show. So come find us, say hi. We may even put you on the air. No promises. Actually, a few promises. We definitely will. To Jacob Pete and the whole Aviation crew, thanks for what you're doing. Keep doing it. We'll see you at Sun and Fun. Up next in the Vintage Aircraft Spotlight, we take a look at the massive Convair B-36 Peacemaker. Welcome to the Vintage Aircraft Spotlight, where we feature notable aircraft throughout history. Now, picture this. You're standing on a runway in the late 1940s. The ground is literally shaking, not from an earthquake, not from thunder, from engines. 6 massive piston engines, each one bigger than a small car, spinning propellers 19 feet across. And if that wasn't enough, 4 jet engines bolted on for good measure. 10 engines total, all on one airplane. That airplane is the Convair B-36 Peacemaker. And today, we're diving into one of the most jaw-dropping machines ever to leave the ground. The B-36 wasn't born from the Cold War. It was actually conceived back in 1941, before the United States had even entered World War II. American military planners had a terrifying scenario on their hands. What if Nazi Germany conquered Britain? What if the US lost access to every airfield in Europe? How do you bomb Berlin from New York? That was the mission. Build a bomber that could fly round trip from the continental United States across the Atlantic, strike a target, and come home. No pit stops, no refueling, just raw, unstoppable range. Consolidated Aircraft, which later became Convair, got the contract in 1941. And then the war happened. Priorities shifted, and the B-36 spent years in development limbo. The prototype, called the XB-36, didn't make its first flight until August 8, 1946, a full year after the war ended. But by then, a new threat had emerged, the Soviet Union. The Cold War was beginning. And suddenly, an intercontinental nuclear bomber wasn't just a good idea, it was urgent. By 1948, the B-36 was operational with Strategic Air Command, SAC, the branch of the Air Force responsible for America's nuclear deterrence. And the timing was critical. That same year, the Soviet Union blockaded Berlin, triggering the famous Berlin airlift. And then in 1949, the Soviets tested their first atomic bomb. The world had changed, and the B-36 was America's answer. Now here's where the engineering gets wild, because this aircraft is genuinely unlike anything else ever built. Start with the wingspan. 230 feet. Let that sink in. That's almost the length of a football field, tip to tip. For comparison, the famous B-29 Superfortress, the plane that ended World War II, had a 141-foot wingspan. The B-36 was 66% longer. Enormous doesn't even cover it. Those wings weren't just big for show. They were 7.5 feet thick at the root. Engineers built a crawl space inside the wing so mechanics could actually climb in during flight to service the engines. Mid-air, in a tunnel, inside a wing. That's not science fiction. That's 1940s American aviation engineering. The crew of up to 15 people lived and worked in pressurized compartments connected by an 85-foot tunnel running through the fuselage. They had bunks, a galley, the ability to move around on missions that sometimes lasted 45 hours. That's not a flight, that's a voyage. And the payload? Mind-bending. The B-36 could carry up to 87,000 pounds of bombs, including early thermonuclear weapons, weapons that made the bombs dropped on Hiroshima look small. One weapon it was designed to carry, the Mark 17, weighed 42,000 pounds and had a yield of up to 20 megatons. 20 megatons. For context, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was about 15 kilotons. The Mark 17 was over 1,000 times more powerful. The B-36 was, without question, the most destructive delivery system ever built at that point in history. Now about those engines. The original design called for 6 Pratt & Whitney R4360 Wasp major radial engines. Massive 28-cylinder monsters in a pusher configuration, meaning the props face backward to push the plane rather than pull it. Each engine had 336 spark plugs. 336. On just one plane, that's over 2,000 spark plugs to maintain. Ground crews had their work cut out for them for sure. Later variants added 4 General Electric J47 turbojet engines, 2 pods under each wing, giving the B-36 a performance boost that pushed its top speed to 435 miles an hour and its service ceiling to over 50,000 feet, higher than most jet fighters of the era could even reach. Crews nicknamed it 6 turnin' and 4 burnin', and the sound it made? Witnesses on the ground described it as a captivating drone you could hear and feel from miles away. Now, did the B-36 ever drop a bomb in actual combat? No, not once. And that, in a way, was the whole point. The doctrine was called nuclear deterrence. The idea being, if your enemy knows you can destroy them completely, they won't start a fight. The B-36 was less a weapon of war and more a weapon of threat. A flying signal to Moscow that said, don't even think about it. Recon variants, the RB-36 flew high-altitude spy missions with cameras so powerful they could photograph golf balls from 40,000 feet. During the Korean War era, these aircraft gathered intelligence that no other platform could reach. And then there was the experimental stuff, because the engineers at Convair were always pushing boundaries. One program, the NB-36H, tested an actual nuclear reactor on board from 1955 to 1957. Yes, a flying nuclear reactor. Sounds like Star Trek. They also experimented with parasite fighters, tiny jets that the B-36 would carry and then deploy in midair, like a flying aircraft carrier. Wild stuff. Absolutely wild. By the mid-1950s, though, jet technology was advancing fast. The B-52 Stratofortress was coming online. All jet, faster, cleaner, more efficient. The B-36's days were numbered. The last B-36 flight ever made? April 30th, 1959. Serial number 52-2220 flew from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona to the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Ohio, where it still sits today in the Cold War Gallery. Of the 384 Peacemakers ever built, only 4 survive. 2 of the others are at the Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona, and the Strategic Air Command Museum in Nebraska. So what's the takeaway? What does this plane matter to you? Here's what I want you to walk away with. The B-36 Peacemaker existed at a crossroads. It was born in one era, propellers, piston engines, World War II era thinking, and it lived into another. Jets, nukes, the space age. The engineers who built it had to solve problems that had never been solved before with tools that barely existed. And they did it. They built a plane with a wingspan the length of a football field, wings thick enough to crawl inside, 10 engines on one airframe, a machine that could fly halfway around the world without landing. The aviation industry has always been about solving impossible problems. That's what it was then, that's what it is now. And somewhere out there, the next generation of engineers, maybe you, is going to build something that makes the B-36 look like a paper airplane. Three guys, a corner of a hangar, a pile of broken radios. That's where today started. And by the time we finished, we talked about cockpit customization, career paths, the future of automation, a magazine built for storytellers, a tram rolling through one of the biggest aerospace expos on the planet, and one of the most fearsome machines ever to darken a cold world sky. Not a bad day's work. None of this happens without people who believe in what we're building here. And today we want to give a genuine, heartfelt thank you to Sarasota Avionics, not just for sitting down with us and sharing their story, but for being the kind of shop that actually embodies everything this show is about. They started small, they built something great, they take care of their people, and they've been an incredible supporter in helping us build the Future in Flight podcast. Zach, Matt, Kelly, Kirk, and the whole Sarasota Avionics crew, we appreciate you more than you know. If you want to check them out, head over to SarasotaAvionics.com, or better yet, fly in. Now, if this episode gave you something, if it sparked a question, opened a door, made you look at a cockpit a little differently, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Future in Flight podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've got a minute, leave us a review. It sounds small, but it genuinely matters. Every review helps more people find the show, and that's the whole mission. We're building something here, episode by episode, story by story, and you're a part of it. Until next time, we'll see you out there and up there.